It is the best possible morning that we have had basically all season right now. Basically all year, this is the best morning because it is Sunday morning. Full slate of NFL games today for the first time since January, man. I cannot wait. I'm so glad that football is back, guys. So, what we're doing this morning is we're just going to answer all fantasy football matchup questions for week one. If you have questions, put them in the live stream. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to go over a lot of important news, a lot of important notes, and a lot of important injuries that have popped up on the injury report and injuries that we have also gotten clarity on as well. So, we're going to do that while we wait for the chat to fill up. If at any point the video gives you value, please make sure to like the video, smash that like button, and hit the subscribe button as well if you are not already. So I will wait for the chat to fill up and just go over some important news and notes that we need to discuss before this ends up happening. So, important injuries to go through. Ramondre Stevenson, he's expected to be a full go this week. So that's a great matchup here. It's not a great matchup, but it's a good situation because Ramondre Stevenson still, I believe, will have a top 12 to 15 finish this week. He's going to be fine. I would definitely put him in my lineup, and I have him in a lot of redraft leagues, and I'm planning to put him in all of those lineups. Mark Andrews is doubtful. Mark Andrews taking off the Houston Texans today. Obviously, huge problem. This has been the tight end injury type of week, man, because George Kittle, he's been injured, but he is expected to go. So that is a good sign for sure that he is expected to go in this matchup. But if you've got Mark Andrews, man, I'm sure I'm going to get questions in the chat right now. Like I said, if you're just joining, make sure to put your questions in the chat. We're just going over some quick injury news and notes right here, and then we're going to start answering all these questions. But right now, I mean, we're looking at Mark Andrews being gone. I mean, you want to look at someone like Gerald Everett. If he's on your waiver wire, go pick him up. Luke Musgrave at this point. I'm not usually a big fan of rookie tight ends, but Romeo Doubs on a pitch count, Christian Watson out. Luke Musgrave is a legitimate option this week. I've said it all week. I think Greg Dulcich is a legitimate option as well. So there's hopefully going to be some waiver wire options that are on your bench right now. So I would go ahead and make sure that you're doing that and being proactive this morning if you've got tight ends, man. Because even in the situation, one of my least favorite things that happens during the football season is when a player is questionable, a truly questionable player, a true 50-50 player, and they're on Monday or Sunday night. It's the worst. It is the worst. So Darren Waller dealing with an injury, questionable tag, playing Sunday night. It sucks. The good news is I did see that he is expected to play. So if you want to take the shot, I personally would because the upside is so high. And maybe you could pick up someone like a Jack Conklin who's playing on Monday night if Darren Waller doesn't go, just to have some insurance at the tight end position. Romeo Doubs, like I said earlier, is going to be on a pitch count. So obviously there's intrigue as far as the wide receivers in Green Bay. Christian Watson out. With Romeo Doubs on a pitch count, I'm very leery of starting him. And I'm sure I might see some questions about Romeo Doubs in this chat. So like I said, if you guys are just joining, we're going over some important news and notes that we need to discuss, and then we're going to start answering your fantasy football questions. So make sure, pop it in the chat this morning, man. Let's go through everything. Javonte Williams, also a very important note here is that he will be on a pitch count as well. So this Denver Broncos backfield, I've been saying all week, it is unstable, and I would not prefer to start Javonte, but I do think he's a flex option. I mean, obviously, you draft him at a position where he's got upside. Like, that's why you drafted him. And so, I don't hate playing him, but I don't love it. And I think very similarly to Breece Hall, his value is going to be later in the season. And really towards like mid-season is where he'll start to bring more value. But I don't think that week one is going to be his week. I would look for maybe another option, but there probably is not too many great options out there. So we're going to go ahead and look at some other news. Breece Hall is expected to go. He's probably going to be – I read a report earlier yesterday that said that there's a chance that Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall split snaps on Monday night 50-50. Brees Hall is still not my preferred play in week one either. I think Dalvin Cook will handle the majority of the volume tomorrow night. And so I would largely tend to lean on the side of staying away from Brees Hall tomorrow night. But again, let's hear some questions here. Almost done with the news and injury notes, and then we will dive into y'all's questions. So Joe Burrow, obviously, if you haven't heard by now, he's a full go. There's no reason to worry about Joe Burrow at all. Fire up Joe Burrow in your fantasy league. Fire up Jamar Chase. Fire up T. Higgins. Kendre Miller, if you have a Saints running back, he is likely going to be out. So what that means, Jamal Williams is going to handle basically every touch in this offense as far as the running backs go. I don't love the matchup. Tennessee was number one defense against rush yards last year. I don't love the matchup. I don't love the offensive line. But just from a volume perspective, Jamal Williams is going to be a fine play this week. Adam Thielen, if any of you have Adam Thielen, he's expected to play as well. And obviously, DJ Chark is out, so someone's going to get those targets. So from a volume perspective, I could definitely see the intrigue. Hollywood Brown expected to go as well. One of the only two functional pieces on the Cardinals offense. Don't blame me if you want to go ahead and play Hollywood either. Jerry Jeudy, not expected to play. So very important note here. Jerry Jeudy, not expected to play. Courtland Sutton is a viable flex option. He's a viable flex option. And Marvin Mims, if you are in a deep league, and you need to take a deep shot, or you just have a bunch of injuries to guys like Christian Watson, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, and you've got to do something, Marvin Mims is not a bad flex play. He's not my favorite, but he is not. He is a deep shot with high upside. And also, if he's under waiver wire, just pick him up because he's got late season upside as well. So let's go ahead, get into all these questions. The chat is filling up, guys. So make sure to keep dropping these questions. And we're going to go through these one by one, making sure everybody gets their questions answered this morning. If at any point the live stream gives you value, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, smash that like button, and make sure to hit the subscribe button if you have not already. And Savvy, what's going on? PPR, Bateman, Mims, or OBJ. I have Lamar. So I am not going to be starting Ravens wide receivers this week. I've been saying it the whole week. Until we see a clear offensive plan and a clear favorite in that offense, I will not be telling my audience to start Ravens wide receivers. I just won't do it because we know the history of Lamar is he does not throw the ball much. And I understand a lot of people are going to say, well, that's because of Greg Roman. The reality is we haven't seen him. He hasn't thrown for more than 400 passes, but one season, and he hasn't thrown for he's only thrown for 3,000 yards one time in his career. And no Ravens wide receiver is really that relevant. I'm going to wait on Ravens wide receiver, see who emerges as the favorite. I'm going to be picking Marvin Mims, actually, in this matchup. I'm glad that we just discussed him. I think he's a better deep play than both of these guys because the reality also with the Ravens matchup this week, guys, is that the Ravens are going to crush the Houston Texans. They're going to curb stomp them today. So what is going to happen is Lamar's going to make a couple plays, obviously with his legs, with his arm. He might find a guy like Isaiah Likely. Like Isaiah Likely, by the way, tight end pickup, legitimate pickup this week. But I'm going to take the shot on Marvin Mims. I like the player, and I think that this is going to be a more competitive offensive matchup, whereas the Ravens will get out to an early lead and probably just run a lot of J.K. Dobbins. So I will go ahead and go with Marvin Mims. Live creation, what is going on, man? Flex Ridley or Godwin. So, yeah, you know that I don't love Ridley. I'm not a huge Ridley guy. I'm also not a huge Godwin guy this year either. I like Godwin as a player, and I think he's had great seasons, but I don't think that this is going to be a great fit with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is not a precision thrower. I don't like that at all. It's not a good with a guy who's a separator. You've got a guy like Mike Evans, and Baker's got a pretty good deep ball. So I have my share of issues. I'll go ahead and play Calvin Ridley in this situation right here because I do think that the offense is just going to be like 10 times better than Tampa Bay's. And Calvin Ridley, I think he's a good player. I just don't love playing him all the time because we haven't seen the guy play a full season in 3 years. So I'll go ahead in this situation and take Calvin Ridley. Sutton Caldwell, what's going on? Musgrave or Muth? This is a clear Muth to me. I understand that the intrigue is going to be there this week with Luke Musgrave because Christian Watson is out, because Romeo Dobbs is on a pitch count, because their main wide receiver may very well be a second-round rookie in Jaden Reed. I understand the intrigue there. I'll still go with Pat Freiermuth because I know what I'm getting out of Pat Freiermuth. And what we could be getting this week easily is a touchdown from Pat Freiermuth. So Pat Freiermuth is really in the last tier of tight ends that I feel very confident consistently starting in fantasy football. And I think that this isn't really it's not really that hard for me to pick this one. I think Musgrave is more in the range of guys like, Tyler Higbee. Like if you wanted to consider that one, I think that's probably a more viable question. But I'll go ahead and take Pat Freiermuth here comfortably. Turkey sub, what's going on? PPR start one. AJ Dillon, P Ryan, or Deion Jackson. Leaning P Ryan, thanks. So this matchup, you've got a couple of backup, to timeshare running backs, and then you've got a guy who's looking to lead the backfield in Deion Jackson. Problem with Deion Jackson is that I think that Indianapolis is going to get crushed today as well. So I think that Jacksonville jumps up to an early lead, and then Indianapolis is going to have to be playing catch up by throwing the ball a lot. I will note that last year, when Deion Jackson started in place of Jonathan Taylor, he had one RB1 finish on a week, and it was against the Jacksonville Jaguars. True statement. Go look it up. I've said it in my videos this week as well. So Deion Jackson definitely has some intrigue just because he looks like he's going to be the main option in this offense, or not in the offense, but in the running back field. AJ Dillon, the matchup is pretty good here against the Chicago Bears defense. I like AJ Dillon this week. Samaje Perine, to be honest with you, I'm not really big on this week. This Denver Broncos backfield is kind of a mess right now to me. Samaje Perine probably will get, he's got a ceiling of getting like 12 to 15 touches, but I think that Samaje Perine has a floor of like 3 to 4. Honestly, I think the range of outcomes as far as volume output goes is pretty significant for a guy like Samaje Perine. I read a report yesterday that a running back I hadn't even heard of before on the Denver Broncos. If some of you know this, know the name and know the report I'm talking about, put it in the chat. But I read a report that one of the Broncos running backs is going to get significant touches tomorrow that was not named Javonte or Samaje Perine. And this came after the report that Javonte Williams is going to miss, not going to miss, but he's going to be on a pitch count. So I've got my issues with Perine this week. I will go ahead and play AJ Dillon out of the three right here because I think he's in the best matchup. I think he will get possibly the same amount of volume as Deion Jackson just because of matchup right here. So I'll go ahead and play AJ Dillon in your situation. If you are just joining, make sure to put in your week one matchup questions in the chat below. I am so excited to be here with you guys. If at any point this live stream gives you value, please make sure to smash that like button, smash that subscribe button if you have not done so already as well. Live creation, risk starting Breece Hall Monday or just put in Antonio Gibson or Swift. So this is a situation here, live creation, where Breece Hall, like I've been saying for a while now, that I think that his upside is going to be late season. I think that specifically his upside is going to come at a time where Dalvin Cook, may be wearing down and Breece Hall will be healthy by then. So I don't think that Breece Hall, betting on him is the best option, especially in a Monday night game. Now, he is expected to play. Like, that's not the question that I have. Question I have is going to be workload related. So Antonio Gibson is going to be in a matchup where Cardinals are just such an easy, breezy win. And then DeAndre Swift going up against the tough New England defense. It's really close between Swift and Hall for me. I'm going to go ahead and take DeAndre Swift just because I think that DeAndre Swift is going to have more upside to get more volume than Breece. They're both basically in the same category of volume potential, but I do think that Swift's chances of handling more volume than Breece Hall are going to be higher. So I'll go ahead. It's close, but I'll take DeAndre Swift in this matchup. Lex, plant some trees. What's going on, my man? Good luck today to you as well. I appreciate you joining here today, man. Terrell, what's going on, my man? Likely or Njoku? So, like I was saying, Isaiah Likely is a legitimate option this week. Legitimate option. I mean, like this is a situation where Isaiah Likely stepped in several times last year and played very well in Mark Andrews' absence. So I have no problem with people wanting to start him. I would actually start Isaiah Likely over a guy like Luke Musgrave personally. So Isaiah Likely definitely a very strong option. Njoku, I personally will still go with Njoku. I think he's just in a tier above Isaiah Likely this week because I think the matchup is also very good in this game as well for David Njoku. So, it's not far off, but I will go with David Njoku because I do think that the volume potential is going to be higher, and I do think that the matchup is relatively just as good, just because I think Baltimore gets up to an early lead, stops throwing the ball by halftime or third quarter. Um, Tim J, what's going on? Start Khalil Herbert, James Cook, or Javonte Williams. So this is all basically these guys are in the same exact tier for me. So this is a very good question. Let's walk through it one by one. Khalil Herbert taking on the Packers today in Chicago. I think that the Bears probably are going to be running the ball a decent amount. I think that the Packers' run defense was weaker than their pass defense last year. So I think that Khalil Herbert's got a lot of good potential this week in this matchup. I do think he will lead the backfield. He's very efficient. He looked good in the preseason as well. James Cook, I love the potential just because of the offense that he's in. I think the potential of the offense is great. I will say, obviously, the matchup is really, really tough, though. This is a very tough matchup that James Cook is about to deal with going up against the Jets defense. Javonte Williams just got done talking about how he's on a pitch count this week, but the Raiders are not a tough defense to deal with personally. So in this situation, all of these guys, I think that as the week has changed, have changed a little bit in my rankings. So Javonte has fallen down since I heard that Sean Payton announced that there will probably be a pitch count for Javonte Williams this week. So I will go ahead and play Khalil Herbert because I do think that his volume is probably the most secure, and he's also got the easiest matchup between him and James Cook. Terrell, yeah, we answered that. Live creation, Flex McLaurin. I lost it real quick. Flex McLaurin, Deion Jackson, or Miles Sanders. So Deion Jackson is not going to be above Miles Sanders for me. I will go ahead and play Miles Sanders because I know the workload will be there. And I know also that Carolina will probably, I think, be more competitive today than Indianapolis will be with Jacksonville. I think that Carolina will be competitive, although I have said, and I full transparency on Miles Sanders, that the Carolina Panthers offensive line really scares me this year. They were not good in the preseason, and that's a problem for Miles Sanders specifically because he is going from the best offensive line in football at the Eagles to probably a bottom 10 to 5 offensive line this year. I've got issues. I still would take Miles Sanders over Deion Jackson. The question is if I'm going McLaurin or Miles Sanders. I'm going Miles Sanders here because I think that Jahan Dotson is going to have a breakout game. I think he's going to be fantastic in this game. And personally, I just think that Miles Sanders is going to have the safest workload out of all of them. I think that Jahan Dotson is going to prove to be better than Terry McLaurin this year. So I will go ahead and play Mr. Miles Sanders in this matchup. If you were just joining, make sure to drop your week 1 fantasy football questions in the chat. I'm going through all of these one by one by one. We are going to continue to move forward. So please, if the video gives you value, make sure to hit that like button. Also, if you're not subscribed, please make sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Let's continue on. So let's plant some trees. What's going on? Bateman or Rachaad White? So I will reluctantly pick Rachaad White here. I am not a Rachaad White guy. As some of you may know, I've been telling you guys stay away from Rachaad White. But in this situation, Rashad Bateman, he just hasn't been around enough. He hasn't been around enough in this offense this offseason. And the problem with it is that it's a new offense that we're going to see with the Ravens here. So I don't love this week for a guy like Rashad Bateman. I think that Rachaad White, his saving grace to me this week is that I think they're going to get down to Minnesota and they're going to have to throw the ball to play catch up. And I think that Baker's offensive line with Tampa is so bad that he's going to have to dump the ball off. And Rachaad White is a good pass catching running back. So I will go with Rachaad White here because I know that he's going to handle the majority of the carries. And I know that he will probably, I would not be surprised if he saw like 5 or 6 targets out of this backfield today. Bateman or Judy or Charbonnet in PPR. So the problem with Jerry Judy is that he is likely out today. I read a report this morning. Jerry Judy is likely out today. So do not plan on starting Jerry Judy in your matchup. And if it's between Bateman and Charbonnet, I'm going with Zach Charbonnet because I think that he's got a higher percentage chance of getting on the field today because of the matchup. I think they're going to curb stop Los Angeles today. There's a couple blowouts that I think are going to happen today, and I think it's going to be Houston getting blown out by Baltimore. I think it's going to be the Los Angeles Rams getting blown out by Seattle. So, and I think Indianapolis probably gets blown out by Jacksonville as well. So, in those types of matchups for running backs, those are good matchups because if you're on the winning team, you're going to run the ball a lot more. And I think that the Seahawks could use this as an opportunity to use Zach Charbonnet. So I think that Charbonnet has more volume this week, more volume potential than Bateman this week. I'll go ahead and play Charbonnet in this matchup. Raymond Duong, what's going on? Waller or Ingram? So this is tough because obviously Waller, like I said earlier, in the Sunday night matchup, and he is questionable. Now, by all accounts, I have seen that Darren Waller looks like he is going to go. So I think that there is a pretty decent tier gap between Waller in week 1 and Ingram in week 1. If Waller plays, I'm all over the matchup. The matchup against the Cowboys, it's not great on paper, but their weakness last year was their pass defense. And also, Darren Waller looks like he looks like a 10 target type of guy this year if he could stay on the field, which has been my problem with Darren Waller. But I think overall, what I would do personally, since there's a decent gap in the tiers right here, I think what I would do in this situation is I would go ahead and bank on Waller playing because I'm expecting him to play based on everything that I've seen from reports, what I've read last night and this morning. So I would go ahead, plan on playing Waller. If Waller doesn't go, I think that Jack Conklin is Jack Conklin of the not Jack, maybe it's Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets. He is not very rostered. So if you want a backup insurance plan, that could be the one that you could go with. He's playing tomorrow night. So I'll go ahead, bank on Waller playing. I just think the matchup situation is very, very good. So let's go on. Let's continue going down the list. If you've got questions, guys, make sure to put all your questions for week 1 fantasy football in the chat below. Hit the like button if it's giving you value and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Let's keep on going. Sabio, what's going on, my man? Flex, Courtland Sutton, Drake London, or Miles Sanders. In my other league, Sutton, A.J. Dillon, Dalvin Cook. We'll go one by one. So I'm going to go ahead in your first league and go with Drake London. I know a lot of people have been saying that I've gotten probably the most amount of questions this week on Drake London specifically. And I'm here to tell you I'm very confidently starting Drake London in several redraft leagues this week. Drake London, I think, this is going to be a matchup that I think Drake London and the Atlanta Falcons are going to take advantage of because Atlanta has real playmakers these days. I mean, Bijan Robinson, obviously top 10 pick. Drake London, top 10 pick coming into the second year. And Kyle Pitts coming back. So I think that Atlanta, and they have a good offensive line. So I actually think that Atlanta could be a much better offense than people are thinking. The problem is Desmond Ridder. Obviously, that's the main problem here. But I think that just from a standpoint of things being opened up so much from other options on this offense, I think it's going to open up a lot for Drake London. I think he's got the highest ceiling of the bunch, so I'll definitely go ahead and pick London in that matchup. And then your other league, Sutton, A.J. Dillon, Dalvin Cook. I will go ahead and go with Dalvin Cook because I think that Dalvin Cook's matchup here is it's not great. Obviously, he's playing the Bills, but I think he's got the highest upside of the bunch right here. They're all kind of relatively close to the same tier. A.J. Dillon down a little bit further than that, but also this stems from my inability to play Courtland Sutton. I have a genuine dark cloud over Courtland Sutton from last year. That's the reality of Courtland Sutton for me. So I'll go with Dalvin Cook here, take the upside, and take the potential that Dalvin Cook has a good game. Top shot of what's going on, Zay Jones or Jonathan Mingo. So it's so funny because Jonathan Mingo is a guy that I don't like. Like, I've been talking about Jonathan Mingo before he got drafted to the Panthers and why you shouldn't pay attention to him. But I acknowledge that this week it's legitimate. I mean, it's a legitimate option this week because DJ Chark is out. Adam Thielen expected to play, but I mean, he's old and he's banged up. So it's like, how many targets does he realistically see? How many snaps does he realistically play? So Jonathan Mingo is a legitimate option, unfortunately, this week. Zay Jones, this is going to sound crazy, man. I'm going to go with Jonathan Mingo because Jonathan Mingo isn't a more competitive matchup, I think. I think that Zay Jones plays he's further down the depth chart. He's on a better offense for sure, but he's definitely going to be down the depth chart behind Calvin Ridley now. And Evan Ingram will probably surpass the amount of targets that Zay Jones will see in this game. And not only in this game, but season long. It sounds crazy. I know my Dynasty audience, if they're here, they're going to be like, what are you doing? But I'm going to go with Jonathan Mingo this week between him and Zay Jones. Yes, please hit that like button if this video is giving you value. So Sutton Caldwell, Musgrave or Freiermuth. Like I said, I will take Pat Freiermuth because I think that Pat Freiermuth, like I said, he's in the last range and tier of guys that I will be willing to start on a consistent basis at the tight end position. There's a lot of disparity every single week with tight ends, but he's really in the last tier that I feel confident starting on a week-to-week basis as far as tight ends go. Him and David Njoku, they're kind of in that same category. So I'll go ahead and take Pat Freiermuth. J Love or Jimmy G or Baker Superflex. So yeah, this is going to be a situation where obviously you're going for Superflex right here. I'm going to go ahead and say that I will not play Jimmy G. I don't love the matchup here against the Broncos defense. I don't love coming into a brand new offense. Obviously, he's got familiarity with Josh McDaniels, and that's a good thing. That's a positive for Jimmy G. But I don't love the situation coming into Denver and playing a tough defense this week. So I think that, honestly, I will go ahead and play Jordan Love because Jordan Love he's in probably the best matchup aside from Baker Mayfield, but I think that Baker and Tampa Bay's offense is going to be really incompetent this week, honestly. So I think that Jordan Love, better offensive line, more time to throw. I'll go ahead and take the matchup here with Jordan Love and play him. Rolando, what's going on? Flex, Jackson Smith-Njigba, my guy, or Michael Pittman, full PPR. So I actually talked about this earlier this morning, I think. Someone had the same exact question. Y'all know, some of you may know, I love Jackson Smith-Njigba forever. I love Jackson Smith-Njigba. I've been shouting from the rooftops, draft him, get him on your team, whatever you got to do, make sure he's on your squad. What I will say is that obviously he's coming in, he's going to be fully healthy, or maybe not fully healthy, but he's not going to have any restrictions after that wrist surgery. The matchup situation is great on paper, but I think that, like I said, I think that this team jumps out to a very early lead and holds it by running the ball. So I don't think that this is going to be a very pass-happy week for the Seattle Seahawks, whereas Michael Pittman and the Indianapolis Colts, I think, are going to need to throw the ball a lot. And Michael Pittman is clearly at the top of the depth chart for wide receivers and doesn't have to worry about handling everybody else. So this week, I will go with Michael Pittman, but season long, I will definitely be taking Jackson Smith-Njigba because I think that I think Jackson Smith-Njigba may have like 5 to 6 targets this week, and he sees like 3 catches for 45 yards or something like that. But I think that his value is going to show later on down the year in tougher matchups where they're not going to curb stomp the Los Angeles Rams because they suck. T19S99, what's going on? Should I start Hurst or Andrews' replacement at tight end? Too bad Andrews is out this week. It is very unfortunate. So I would go ahead and play Isaiah Likely in this matchup. Isaiah Likely, to me, is just going to be he's going to be a higher upside play in this matchup against the Houston Texans. I think that Isaiah Likely has a legit likelihood of scoring a touchdown in this game. I think that is absolutely in the cards for Isaiah Likely. Hayden Hurst, don't love the player. in not a bad offense. Like Bryce Young's a good quarterback, but offensive line issues. I think they're going to struggle this week. First week with Bryce Young. Uh, Frank Reich is the coach now. I think it's going to be a tougher week. I'll go ahead and play Isaiah Likely. Francisco Frias, what's going on? Start one for flex. Jordan Addison, Javonte Williams, or Van Jefferson right here. So I'll go ahead and play Javonte Williams in this matchup. I think that he's got the matchup is good enough for me to feel comfortable with going with a guy like Javonte Williams in this situation. Whereas Jordan Addison is a guy where I think that he's going to be pro ready. And I think he will contribute basically right out of the gate for this offense. But the matchup here, it's not ideal. Like I said, I think that Minnesota probably jumps out to an early lead and wins by two touchdowns, maybe 3 scores, 17 points. So I think that Addison's got better days ahead of him, much like Jackson Smith-Njigba. I don't think it's his time right now. And Van Jefferson, totally understand. I mean, he can legitimately see 10 targets. The problem is, how many of those 10 targets is he actually going to catch, and what is he going to do with the work that he gets? That's my problem here. So I will go ahead and play Javonte Williams over those 2 guys this week. If you are just joining, man, make sure to put your fantasy football week 1 questions in the chat right now. We're going through it question by question by question, making sure all of you have your questions answered this week. If the video is giving you value, make sure to give the thumbs up button a smash, and make sure to smash that subscribe button if you are not subscribed already. Let's continue to move on down. Ryan Stedman, Drake London, or Ayuk? Relatively close. I think that Ayuk is going to be a decent play this week. I'm going to go ahead and play Drake London. I've got a lot of confidence in Drake London this week. He's a couple tiers above Brandon Ayuk in my personal rankings this week, so I will go ahead and go with Drake London. Mateo the Man. Do I start Dalton Kincaid or Isaiah Likely? So Dalton Kincaid, to me, is going to be a very, boom or bust guy. Like, boom or bust is totally what happens this week because the Jets defense is very stout, obviously. But the good thing about the Jets defense and, the Buffalo Bills situation is that their main target is going to be blanketed by Sauce Gardner the whole game. Stephon Diggs is going to have a tougher game. I think that he's still going to be great because he's a great player, but I do think that he might have his struggles this week, which could leave guys like Gabe Davis and even Dalton Kincaid open. So the matchup potential here, I really like better than Isaiah Likely, but I will go ahead and play Isaiah Likely because I do think that the reality with Lamar Jackson is that he loves to throw to tight ends. And Isaiah Likely filled in very, very nicely last year for Mark Andrews. I'll take Isaiah Likely. They're relatively close to my rankings this week after it's all said and done. I'll go with Isaiah Likely just because I prefer the matchup and I prefer the potential that the quarterback throws at the tight end. All right, let's keep it moving. Turkey sub, you bet, man. Jay Bowick, Jamal Williams versus Herbert, and Jamal Williams versus Dobbs. So we'll go ahead and say that Jamal Williams, guys, definitely going to be a legitimate play this week. Obviously, Alvin Kamara is out. Kendre Miller is out as well. He's looking like he's out. Probably not going to play. He hasn't been ruled out yet, but he is likely not going to play. So this situation for me this week, Jamal Williams is a legitimate guy. Problem is the matchup. Don't love the matchup against the Tennessee Titans. Khalil Herbert, probably not going to have as stable of a workload this week. I think that Khalil Herbert could relinquish some touches to Deontay Foreman, maybe some pass catching work to Roschon Johnson. I think that I'll go ahead and play Jamal Williams this week over Khalil Herbert just because I know that Jamal Williams is probably going to see – I wouldn't be surprised if Jamal Williams sees 20-plus carries in this game. And Jamal Williams versus Dobbs, I'll go ahead and play Jamal Williams again because Romeo Dobbs is dealing with an injury where he will be on a pitch count this week. That was announced this morning. So that is a problem as well. So I will go ahead and start Jamal Williams in both of those matchups right here. Sport Dog, what's going on? 18 PPR, need a running back. James Cook or Ramondre. I am using Josh Allen for my quarterback. I can also use Dalton Kincaid or Luke Musgrave for tight end. Thanks. Watch you all the time. I appreciate you joining, man. I appreciate your support as a viewer. I really appreciate you. So I'm going to go ahead and play Ramondre for sure. You know, I like James Cook this week. I'm definitely willing to start James Cook. I put him in my start category of must start sick running backs in week one, yesterday's video. I put James Cook as a starter. So definitely have no problem starting James Cook. I think Ramondre is just in a couple tiers higher. I like Ramondre this week because he's going to be getting pass catching work. And I think that he's going to lead the backfield with like 15 to 18 touches this week. So I think that Ramondre is a very good player. I obviously see the point that you have on James Cook, but I will take Ramondre Stevenson because I know that I can count on his volume more. And yeah, that's what I'll go ahead and do in your situation. John Orton, GOAT, I appreciate it. Let's continue on down. Sebastian Dominguez, Damian Pierce, or Khalil Herbert at flex right here. So Damian Pierce this week, guys, I've said it all week. I don't love the matchup this week. I love Damian Pierce season long. I think he's going to have upside as the season continues on. This week, I don't think is going to be his week. I think that Khalil Herbert is probably going to be a higher upside play. I will go ahead and pick Khalil Herbert because I think that Houston is going to get down early and they're going to have a lot of struggles. So I will go ahead and play Khalil Herbert in this matchup right here. Mason Miller have to sit one. Damian Pierce, Antonio Gibson, Elijah Moore, or Javonte, leaning Pierce due to matchup. So this is actually a situation where I would go ahead and sit a guy like Antonio Gibson personally. I've got Damian Pierce ranked several spots higher than Antonio Gibson this week. I think his volume is just safer, more secure. Obviously, the matchup is not good. We just got done talking about it. But Antonio Gibson, to me, like his workload is so unpredictable this year. Brian Robinson probably going to lead the backfield in carries this year. Antonio Gibson should get passing down work. I'll go ahead and say Antonio Gibson, very close to Elijah Moore, but I'll go ahead and sit Antonio Gibson in this matchup. Make sure to drop your week one fantasy football questions in the chat below. We are making sure we answer every single question you guys have. Make sure to like the video if it has given you value so far, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. All right, great, Scott. I love it. Hey guys, what two should we start in flex? PPR, Keenan Allen, Mostert, Hopkins, Dotson. So Keenan Allen, you're definitely going to start this week. Keenan Allen is in a fantastic matchup where Justin Herbert against the Dolphins today, I expect him to throw for like 35 to 40 or 40 passes or even more. This is going to be a fireworks matchup. I love the matchup here against the Dolphins for both sides of the ball. Both teams, I love the matchups here. Except for defense. Don't play either defense this week, that's for sure. So Keenan Allen definitely going to be one of them. Mostert obviously in the great matchup right here. Hopkins and Dotson also in great situations where they're definitely going to be getting plenty of targets as well. I'll go ahead and play Jahan Dotson over Hopkins barely because I think that Dotson this week is going to be in a definitely an easier matchup, whereas Hopkins is going up against Marshawn Lattimore. They're both in run-first offenses that I have issues with the quarterbacks on. I think Jahan Dotson has the bigger boom potential this week than DeAndre Hopkins. So I will go ahead and play Jahan Dotson in this matchup. John Orton, what's going on? Harris or London for flex. So if you're referring to Najee Harris, obviously, if you watch my running back rankings video this week, you know that I have issues with Najee Harris this week. I absolutely have issues with him. These guys are really, really close, actually, in my overall tiers for the week. So I've got issues with Najee. Don't have as many issues with Drake London. I think the upside is higher here for Drake London, but I also do acknowledge that Najee Harris is probably going to see 15 touches in this game pretty easily. I will go ahead and play. This is tough, man. I'll be honest with you. This is probably the toughest question I've had all day. Najee Harris or Drake London, I will go ahead and stick to my gut here and play Drake London. I'm going to go with the upside play. Upside is what we're looking for here in week one. Week one, the reality here is, guys, let me just say this real quick. The reality here with week one is that It's the hardest week of any week during the fantasy football season. It's easily the hardest week of any week because there's a lot of guys on new teams, a lot of new coaches, a lot of new players at each position. There's so many unpredictable things, and nobody has game tape on the season yet. So there's so many things that could happen. Like, we're gonna see at least a couple upsets this week. Like a team like Indianapolis, I've seen as a dark dog in this week. I don't think it's going to happen, but it definitely could. The point being that this week is very, very tough. And obviously, I'm here for it. We're all here for it. I'm totally here to answer every question. But this is the reality with week one is that if things don't go as planned, the reason I'm saying it is that if things don't go as planned for you in week one, don't panic because this is the week where things are beginning to get ironed out. So everybody's going to look different in week 6 than they do today and tomorrow night. Like every team is going to look different. So just don't panic if you don't have a great week this week. We're going to be fine. We're going to continue to answer all these questions, and we're going to continue to be very active during the season. I've got content out every single day during the season, basically. So let's just go ahead, keep a lid on it. Don't panic tonight. Let's just take a deep breath, and we'll figure it out together. But that's just a side note. Nobody's panicking right now, obviously. I'm just saying that week one is definitely a week where everything changes, and there's a lot of new pieces on each team. So it's harder to predict week one for everybody. So let's go ahead, keep going down the list. Sutton, Dotson, Breece Hall, Deion Jackson, full PPR. So Courtland Sutton, legitimate option this week. Unfortunately, I would go with Dotson over Sutton already, though. So I've got Dotson, and we'll kick Sutton out. Breece Hall this week. Don't love it. Upside is definitely there because he's a great player, though. Deion Jackson, even if it's between Deion Jackson and Breece Hall for me, I would personally go with Breece Hall. Honestly, I really will because I think that Breece Hall, he's expected to play, and I think he's just a better player. And Indianapolis as well, worth noting, guys. Indianapolis said, Coach Frank Reich, or not Frank Reich. Living in the past. Coach Shane Steichen said that this team will use the hot hand at running back. So that means if they put Evan Hull, rookie running back out of Northwestern, if they put him in the matchup today and he does well, they'll use him. So Deion Jackson does not have a secure workload. He will lead the backfield for sure. But if it's an insecure workload for both of them, I'm taking the better player, which is Breece Hall. Now with Dotson, I think he's going to be better than all of them. Dotson, for me, is in a tier above all those other guys, so I will go ahead and go with Jahan Dotson in this matchup. Sutton Caldwell, thoughts on starting Likely when JK is my running back already? Yeah, I don't think that affects too much for me personally. It all depends really on who you've got as a tight end option. Like to me, Isaiah Likely, I would play him over someone like Luke Musgrave personally. They're close, so if you have Luke Musgrave and you prefer to go with him, I don't mind it because they are in the same tier for me, basically. I would prefer Isaiah Likely, even if I have J.K. Dobbins. That's not a big deal for me personally, but I acknowledge that, maybe that's a conflict of interest there. I don't think it should be personally. But, I don't have a problem with starting Isaiah Likely, even though you've got J.K. G Soccer, what's going on? Yeah, we just answered that one. Matthew Shea Films, totally cheers to the season starting. Totally in agreement, guys. If you agree that you are happy the season is starting, make sure to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you're new here and put in your fantasy football questions for week one this week. Let's go ahead and just continue to move through the lineup this week. Kelston Batista, what's going on? Bateman, Mims, Zay Flowers, or Jalen Warren at flex. So this week, Zay Flowers is probably going to be the pick I have here because I trust Zay Flowers' workload and potential more than I do with Bateman, just because Bateman missed so much time in the offseason. Mims is a close second for me because I think that Mims has higher upside than Zay Flowers does, but the workload is not going to be as ironed out as I do think it will be for Zay Flowers this week. So I will go ahead and play Zay Flowers. I'm not going to tell my audience to start Jalen Warren in week one. The upside, if you look back to last year, the number of games he was even decent for fantasy football is very small. So I'm not going to come out and say, just because of offseason hype, we're going to have to start Jalen Warren all of a sudden. No, we need to see what happens Najee Harris is well liked by this team. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but what I always say is that my fantasy football analysis comes first. Everything I know about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the team when it comes to Najee Harris versus Jalen Warren, the team loves Najee Harris. He's a leader in the locker room. Mike Tomlin loves him, and Mike Tomlin loves a workhorse running back. So Najee Harris will continue to lead this backfield in carries and total overall volume because this is a first round pick we're talking about, while also acknowledging that Jalen Warren will get more touches this year, but it's not going to be the week where I'm telling you guys to play Jalen Warren, especially in this type of a matchup against the 49ers. So I will go with Zay Flowers here. Tim J, thanks for answering my question. Love the show. I appreciate you for joining, man. Thank you for joining. Kelston, Bayman Mims, Zay Flowers, Jalen Warren. Yep, just answered that one. Tony Macaluso. There we go. That's the one. Dalvin Cook or Van Jefferson or Jackson Smith-Njigba. I have Tyler Lockett in my starting lineup, PPR. So, yeah, this is a situation where I will go with Dalvin Cook here because I know that Dalvin Cook is going to handle the majority of the volume in this offense, and it's in a better offense. Like, Van Jefferson is like, I understand people Van Jefferson this week. Like, he's more of a, not deep shot, but he's more of a deeper shot than those guys are for me. I would go with Jigba over Van Jefferson personally, and I would go with Dalvin Cook over both of those guys because I do think that Dalvin Cook will handle the majority of the volume this week. It's going to be a competitive game. They're going to need to continue to do that. Whereas Jackson Smith-Njigba, coming off the wrist surgery, he's not going to be limited in this game, which is fantastic. And I love Jackson Smith-Njigba very, very much. Some of you may know, but I don't think that the matchup is going to favor a heavy passing game for Seattle. I think they're going to kill the Los Angeles Rams this week. So I'll go ahead and play Dalvin Cook in this matchup. If you've got questions, keep loading up the chat with them, man. We're going to answer every single question on today's chat right now. Let's keep it moving, guys. And make sure to like the video if it is giving you value, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Okay, Johnny Jackson, what's going on, my man? I need to pick two out of Dalvin Cook, Ayuk, Khalil Herbert, and Rachaad White. So I will go ahead and say that Khalil Herbert will be one of them. I'm sorry. We're not going to do that. We're going to go with Ayuk as one of them. Ayuk is definitely going to be one of the guys in there. The matchup against the Steelers is not as tough as people think. Now, I do acknowledge that the Steelers' defense will be improved because of the pass rush in the front seven, but like I just said, I'm a Steelers fan. I know about this team quite a bit. Patrick Peterson could be a Hall of Fame player. He's in his 30s. He's definitely not as good as he once was. Levi Wallace, very unproven corner as well. So I don't think the matchup against the Steelers is going to be as difficult as everyone thinks. But I do think that the Steelers will be good. I just think that Ayuk could take advantage of this matchup and hit a couple big plays in this game. So I'll go ahead and play Ayuk as one of them. And then I will go ahead and play Khalil Herbert in this game over Dalvin Cook. They're very close to me just because I know that Dalvin Cook is going to handle the majority this week. But I also know that about Khalil Herbert. And I think his upside this week is actually a little bit higher than Dalvin Cook. So I'll take Khalil Herbert and Brandon Ayuk. All right, let's keep it moving. So I see Rachaad White or J.K. Dobbins. Got Jacobs and Waller as running back 1 and running back 2. So Rachaad White or J.K. Dobbins, it's a very clear J.K. Dobbins for me. J.K. Dobbins is probably one of my top favorite starts of the week. Matchup is excellent. Against the Houston Texans, dead last in rushing yards allowed last year. This team is going to struggle. The Houston Texans are going to struggle right out of the gate. Rookie head coach, although I like DeMeco Ryans a lot, and I do think that specifically on the defensive side of the ball, they will improve over time, though. It's not going to be week one against an offense that is so run-heavy and very efficient doing it. So J.K. Dobbins, to me, is a great play this week, and I would definitely pick him over Rachaad White, who I don't personally love that much. Waller is questionable. Should I start Evan Ingram instead? Like I said, I'm going to go ahead, and I think someone had this exact same question that I answered earlier. So I will go ahead and play Waller this week. I think that Waller, to me, is just the tier difference here. Not that, let's see. Cordarrelle Patterson is inactive today. Just got that alert, just so you guys know. Cordero, I'm sorry, not Cordero Patterson. Uh, Darren Waller to me is in a different tier than Evan Ingram. Not that Ingram is a bad play this week, but I think that the upside is just so great with a guy like Darren Waller, particularly, that I am willing to take the shot since he is playing Sunday night. And if he doesn't go, if you have a guy like Tyler Conklin of the New York Jets on waivers, pick him up as insurance because he's a good insurance option. Like I would rather take the shot and go with Waller personally because from what I'm seeing, everything I've seen is that Darren Waller is expected to play in this game. So I'm going to go ahead and bank on that, and I'm comfortable telling my audience to do that as well. Great Scott team, Kyler quarterback, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Keenan Allen, Hopkins, Dotson, Gabe, Ramondre, Brees, Kamara, Mostert, and Joku Kincaid. Do I make waiver wire moves or trade for upgrades in positions? Yeah, I think that, we got to see how week one plays out first. Let's go ahead and see how week one plays out. I like the looks of your team so far, personally. You've got some good high upside players at running back and wide receiver. So I think that let's just see how it plays out first before we make any decisions on where we go with the waiver wire. The waiver wire, I'll have a video out tomorrow for sure on the waiver wire guys and also trade targets to go after. But we need to see what happens in football today. So let's go ahead and just enjoy the football first before we try to jump ahead too many steps. We got to make sure that we're watching these games. Jack, what is going on, my man? Rashad White, Ayuk, or Sutton this week? So let me take a drink real quick. Yeah, so Brandon Ayuk is going to be my pick this week. They're all relatively close. I've got Ayuk a tier higher than than Cortland Sutton personally. I think that he's going to be in a situation where the big playability is going to be there. I trust the big playability with him more than I do with Sutton and Rashad White. So I'll go ahead and take Brandon Ayuk in this matchup against the Steelers. CJ Chris, what's going on? So what up, Dotson or Khalil Herbert, half PPR? Love both of these guys this week. Definitely cool with either one of these guys going in your lineup personally. I will go ahead and pick up Jahan Dotson and put him in my lineup this week. I think that the matchup is going to be really good and favor him because while I do think Washington will win this game, their offense is not good enough for me to think it's going to be a blowout. And what it means is that the team will continue to throw the ball. So I think that they'll continue to throw this week. And I like the matchup here for both of them. I've got Dotson just a little bit higher, though, so I'll go ahead and go with Dotson. If you're just joining, make sure to put in your chats in the live stream right now. We're answering all week one fantasy football questions before week one starts. I'm so excited to be here, guys. Make sure to hit that like button if it's giving you value so far and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already and you play fantasy football. All right, let's continue on. Lost my place really quick. Okay, Isaiah Rodriguez, Calvin Ridley, or Keenan Allen. So I will go ahead and play Keenan Allen this week. The matchup is fantastic. The matchup against the matchup, this is probably one of my favorite matchups of the week, is not Kansas City. The Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Miami Dolphins this week. I love this matchup. I expect complete fireworks. I've said it multiple videos this week. I expect Justin Herbert to throw at least 35 to 40 passes in this game. Truly do expect to see that. And I think if that's the case, Keenan Allen gets about 10 to 12 of those targets at least. So love Keenan Allen this week. Calvin Ridley, I think that Indianapolis is going to lose pretty easily to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Jacksonville just doesn't need to throw the ball as much. So I will go ahead and play Keenan Allen in this matchup. Not a huge Calvin Ridley guy this year. Do acknowledge that he has upside, but I'm playing Keenan Allen for sure. DBSG, is it okay to start Williams and Allen for the Chargers because they are after the same points? I think it's personally, I think this is can be one of the bigger myths in fantasy football is having a wide receiver on the same team on your team, two of them. So in high upside offenses like the Bengals, for example, where you've got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I'm totally fine with that. Like, that's not a problem for me. You've got an offense like the Chargers fall into this category as well. The Dolphins fall into this category. The Eagles fall into this category. There are certain offenses where I do not mind this at all and playing them at the same time. Because this matchup, as I just got done talking about, is tremendous this week. It's unbelievably tremendous. The fireworks are going to be there. So I'm totally okay with playing Mike Williams. I would definitely play Keenan Allen first, but I'm totally okay with playing Mike Williams in this matchup. Patrick, what's going on, man? Is likely fine to start over Mark Andrews? Yes, because Mark Andrews is not playing today. So I am definitely okay with starting Isaiah Likely. We've discussed him a lot in this chat, in this live stream. Totally fine with playing Isaiah Likely. Logan, what's going on? Flex 1. McLaurin, Pittman, Sutton. I will go ahead and play Michael Pittman here. They're all around the same tier. I like the Indianapolis situation because they're going to be in a hole, I think, and they're going to have to throw the ball a ton. And I think that Michael Pittman has he is the clear front runner for targets in the offense, not only in that offense, but among the guys on the list. I think Jahan Dotson is going to be better this week than McLaurin. I think that Sutton could definitely be fine, but I think that Marvin Mims could also be a threat as well. So I'll go ahead and play Michael Pittman in this matchup. Alex Yan, what's going on? Half PPR, Connor or London at the flex. Currently got London in. So I'm going to go ahead. I'd say stick with London. I love London this week, especially over James Conner, who I do think is going to struggle. Bottom 3 offensive line against a very stout Washington defense. Got a lot of issues with the Arizona Cardinals season long, of course, but I do think that Drake London is just a clear answer for me. I will go ahead and tell you to stick with Drake London in your flex spot. K, should I use Goddard or Njoku? I'm going to take Goddard because I do think that Goddard's just in a tier above Njoku, not only for this week, but season long. I think that season long, he's just in a tier above David Njoku, but I also do acknowledge that Njoku is a pretty good play this week as well. I prefer Goddard because I do think that also, I've said it on a lot of videos this week, there is an element here to, I think that the Eagles wide receivers in particular probably will struggle this week because Bill Belichick is known for taking away your number one option, which is A.J. Brown. So I do think that there's a really big opportunity here because the Eagles have so many weapons. The Patriots can't stop them all. My gut is telling me that Goddard is actually going to have a decent day this week, going on today. Benjamin Hawkin, what's going on? Nico Collins or Jackson Smith-Njigba? This is where I take Jackson Smith-Njigba. I take the shot on the better player, the guy that I like more. I would definitely go with Jackson Smith-Njigba this week. Nico Collins clearly going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, especially in week 1. Obviously, they're going to be in a hole. They're going to have to throw. I think the upside is just higher with Jackson Smith-Njigba this week, so I'll take him. Scott Ellis, McLaurin, Pittman Jr., or Jerry Jeudy for the flex. So Jeudy you can't do because Jeudy is probably not going to play today. Jeudy is likely going to be out. I will go ahead and take Michael Pittman Jr. in this particular matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars, where I believe they will have to throw the ball a ton to keep up. If you are joining, make sure to put in your fantasy football questions for week 1 in the chat below. Make sure to drop a like if this video is giving you value so far, and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Pyromaniac, I grabbed Kelsey. I have Musgrave. Do you think he can come through? Musgrave is fine. Musgrave, I think, is going to be a fine play this week because Christian Watson's out. Romeo Doubs will be on a pitch count this week. So that means that likely this team's wide receiver 1, if it's not Doubs, is going to be Jaden Reed, rookie out of Michigan State. And he was a second rounder. So, I think that Musgrave could have some pretty decent involvement in this offense. So I will go ahead and take Luke Musgrave as a fine play. I think he's going to be a fine play this week. The matchup isn't terrible. So, yeah, depending on who else is out there and what your options are, I think that Luke Musgrave is just fine. Browns domination. What's going on? Flex and full PPR. Zay Flowers or Van Jefferson. I will go ahead and play Van Jefferson here. I have more confidence in Van Jefferson's workload that he'll see over what I do with Zay Flowers. So I'll go ahead and pick Van Jefferson. Think there's a possibility he sees 10 to 12 targets this week. I don't see that with Zay Flowers. Let's take a look at some news coming out. Obviously, we are past 10:30, so we are getting some updates on players who are out. So let's look and see what we have got here. Some updates here. Mark Andrews is officially out. So Mark Andrews is officially ruled out. Isaiah Likely, like we've been discussing, legitimate matchup this week that I think that he could take advantage of. Cordell Patterson inactive, and Kendre Miller is also out as well. So Jamal Williams, totally good with you firing Jamal Williams up this week. I think he's a great pick. Let's get back to the questions here. So Johnny Jackson, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Lawrence is Bay. What's going on? Flex 1. Keenan Allen, Pittman, Thielen, Piron, JSN. Definitely Keenan Allen here. Keenan Allen's in a great matchup. I think this team is going to be both teams. I mean, both teams in the Dolphins Chargers matchup are going to be throwing the ball like crazy. I'll definitely take Keenan Allen in this particular matchup. It's really not close, although you don't have bad options. Keenan Allen, I think, is going to be a great pick this week. Great Scott, thanks for your help. Drop a like and subscribe. I appreciate you joining, man. I will be doing these live streams every single week on Sunday mornings, guys, just so you know, unless something comes up in which I will let you guys know about ahead of time. But plan on seeing these live streams every morning on Sunday during the season. And also make sure you're subscribed because we have videos coming out every single day during the season. I go and stay up all night. I barely sleep during the season, so I make sure that you guys get every piece of content that you need for week 1 and every single week after that to prepare for every single fantasy football week as best as we can. I'm a one-man show over here, so I make sure I stay up late to make sure everything gets done for you guys. So please drop a like on this video to show me that you appreciate it and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. I appreciate you guys a lot. This channel is nothing without the audience, man. I appreciate all of you guys, and I love the community we're building. I ran out of water. The way of life. Thoughts on Nico Collins at flex? I got word from another YouTuber to start him over Ayuk, and I need your input. Yeah, I would not personally do that. I would personally go with Ayuk over Nico Collins. The upside is higher here for a guy like Ayuk, and I think it really all depends on the strategy that everybody has in fantasy football. Everybody plays fantasy different. What I always say on this channel, over a decade of playing fantasy football and over, dozens and dozens of winning teams that I've constructed, the way I've won is that I go for upside. So even if it sounds a little bit shaky, if the player has the higher upside, I'm playing that player. So a guy like Brandon Ayuk is going to be the guy that I go with here. Nico Collins is in a really bad offense with a rookie quarterback going to absolutely struggle this week against a Baltimore defense that is stout. So again, and I think one of the other important things about fantasy football in particular is that we need to acknowledge defense and matchup situations in specific. And I don't think that most fantasy YouTubers do that. Not going to call out names, but most fantasy YouTubers do not talk about defense. I do weekly defense rankings at fantasy football because it's an important piece of not only your lineup, but also an important piece of knowing what your players on your teams are going up against. So I that's why I talk about defenses every single week. I don't get a ton of views for the defensive videos. I don't get a ton of views for the kicker videos as well, but they're very important. And that's why I want to make sure that we're prepared. So I'll go ahead and play Brandon Ayuk in this matchup because the upside is simply just higher. I disagree with Nico Collins over him. I don't think Nico Collins is a terrible play. He's definitely flex worthy, but not over a guy like Brandon Ayuk to me. Lawrence is Bay. Running back, Kenneth Walker or Samaje Perine. Definitely Kenneth Walker here. You fire up Kenneth Walker. Comes into the matchup injury-free. In a great matchup here where I think they're going to kill the Los Angeles Rams today. Kenneth Walker, easy decision here. Patrick, what's going on? Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Going to follow and watch more of your stuff. Love the content. I appreciate you very much, man. Jared, 1124. Help. Is Mark Andrews starting or likely? You're going to have to go with Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews was just officially ruled out if you were not here for that moment that we had on the channel. Top MF in here. I love that name. That's so good. full, full PPR. Pick 2, Javonte Williams, Khalil Herbert, or Drake London. That name just cracked me up, man. I love that. I will go ahead and go with London for sure. And Javonte Williams versus Herbert, very, very close. I'm going to go ahead and pick Khalil Herbert. I think the matchup here is they're both decent matchups here. Both could be in very similar both could be in very similar situations where they have a cap on what they're doing. I don't think that Khalil Herbert's cap is going to be as bad as Javonte's could be. So I'm going to go ahead and play Khalil Herbert, acknowledging also that Javonte Williams is a decent start. Like, I'm not going out of my way to sit Javonte Williams. I think he's fine, but I do think that his upside comes later on in the year. Let's continue on. Brian Evans, PPR, Sutton, Pickens, or London. Love Pickens this week. I think he's a very good boomer bust type of play. I think that Drake London has just as big of a chance to boom, and I do think that he has the safer floor as well. So I will go ahead and play London, also acknowledging that Pickens easily could be a very, very good play this week as well, and I have no problem with people playing Pickens. So, guys, this is probably the last run right here. So if you are in here and you still have fantasy questions for week 1, drop them in the chat. Make sure to like the video if it is giving you value and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. So let's continue on. Keep on moving through. Rift, thoughts on Deontay Johnson for flex? It just depends. I mean, Deontay Johnson's a fine flex option. He's definitely going to see plenty of targets in this game because Deontay Johnson is a target guy. I mean, that's how he makes his fantasy relevance is just making sure that he gets targets. He'll get targets this week. It just depends. I think as far as I'm considering Deontay Johnson, he's more of in my middle tier of flex guys, but he is definitely a flex-worthy type of option. DBSG, what's going on? Juju or Gabe Davis? Definitely going with Gabe Davis here. Acknowledging that Juju Smith-Schuster is the wide receiver one in this offense is important, but also acknowledging that Gabe Davis honestly could be in a situation where he has a decent week because Sauce Gardner is going to be blanketing Stephon Diggs. Again, the importance of defense is acknowledging this type of situation. Sauce Gardner is a very good corner, possibly the best